Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to JMP's Expert Speaker Series. We're going to wait one more minute to get started because we still have a few people logging in, so we appreciate your patience, and we will be right back. Okay, so thank you again for joining JMP Consulting for our Expert Speaker Series. We are happy to have Jacqueline Tiso, our founder and CEO of JMP Consulting, presenting today on eliminating the monthly close. First off, I'd like to share a few housekeeping notes, and then I'll turn it over to Jackie. If you have any questions during the webinar, please make sure to submit them in the questions panel on the control panel. It's on your right, and we will remind you at the end as well. We will answer questions at the end. So if you ask a question during the middle of the webinar, don't worry, we will get to it. You're also going to receive a survey at the end of the webinar to tell us how we did today. And finally, today's webinar is being recorded, and the slides will be emailed to you along with the recording tomorrow. So with that, I will turn it over to Jackie, and thank you again.
Hello, everybody, and as Missy said, thank you for joining us today. I'm really happy to be talking with you about eliminating the monthly close. Being an accountant, it's probably many of us sitting here thinking to ourselves, what are we talking about? So actually, I'm going to share my thoughts about, what the month-end close is and why we should think about eliminating it and what that really means. And then how might we go through the process of doing that within your organization? So the first thing I'm going to start with is, a survey was done not too long ago by one of our partners, Flowcast, and they went out and they actually surveyed all their clients about their process around the month-end close, and it was really astonishing numbers, as this slide actually shows. When I actually saw the percentages, I was like, wow. But then I thought about it some more, and I realized I was like, okay, well, this is actually pretty normal. I know from just my own company's experience and with clients that closing can be a very, very stressful period. And not only is it stressful, but it really does impact, personal lives and, the balance of life, if you will. And then, we also have the whole issue about reopening the books. We say we're closed, but if you think about it, if you really think about your organization and what you're doing, how many times you actually go back and reopen the books because you have an adjustment or something. And, add on to that the fact that, 75% of the respondents, and I know this is even true for myself, I'm not 100% confident that the close is really the close and that there isn't something else that really might be floating out there and that might be corrected. And, so I thought about if it's this much stress and we're reopening our books that often, and I'm sitting here and I'm not even that confident about the close process overall, I really thought about it and I was like, okay, so what are we doing here with the whole process of the month-end close, and why are we doing it? So then I thought to myself, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and, there really has to be an easier way about this whole process, and thinking about, what is the ROI, the return on investment that I'm getting from this process if I think about the stress that it's putting on my team and my staff, and I don't have confidence in the numbers. And so, I said, okay, well, let me just think about what we're really talking about in the month-end close. What is it all about? And, it really is first and foremost about verifying and adjusting activities that are going on in your organization and in your books. And, you're often waiting for information to come into you, and then you might be analyzing it, reconciling it, and then you're booking entries. And the idea is you're going to produce these reports so that they can go out to management for the activities. And often these reports are quite a bit, delayed. And if you're really doing well, then, maybe you close in the, 2 weeks after the month end. But for most of our nonprofit clients, it's typically going into 3-4 weeks, sometimes up to 8 weeks. And so, what's the real visibility you get around all this? Because it is about, visibility. So, I said to myself, okay, well, that's a process. And so maybe we could think about how do we streamline this process rather than, jumping to anything different. We could talk about streamlining the process to improve efficiency and what do we do about that. But I actually want to talk about more than just potentially streamlining and I'm going to provide some ideas for that. But I really want to talk about what is really the goal around shortening up this entire process. And it's not about efficiency. If we think about streamlining, we're trying to be more efficient. But it's not really about efficiency. We can be more efficient, but what is that really going to give your organization? What kind of information is it really going to apply? So I didn't really want to stop there at efficiency. I said, I really want to think more about what to me is more important, and that's about effectiveness. So yes, I want to get some efficiencies, but I also want to get effectiveness in the process. And, why would I want to be effective? Well, for me, effectiveness is helping my organization to have the visibility to information that it needs as that is happening. And so if I can change up and redefine, if you will, the close process from this hard thing that is at the month end or the quarter end, could I really help my organization to get the visibility it needs to the information that it needs? So, then I said, okay, let me just really dive into effectiveness of a monthly close. And so, the question I asked myself, and this was, right in managing my own company, this is where I started with this, not just from our client side, but from, living it myself. I said, I really thought about what is the closing the month process really doing for me and my managers at JMT, and what is involved in this process, and what is the cost of it. And so I really did a cost-benefit analysis, if you will, and I thought about what would be the benefits of not having a hard close, which we know from the earlier slide really isn't a hard close, at all. This whole month close, it's not really closed. The books are reopened almost 80% of the time. So, really, what are the benefits of having it? And, it came to, my team and providing them a better balance and improved, timing, and the cost effectiveness of seeing results. And then, the other side of it was, I have delays. When I have a close, I actually have my department, saying, well, I can't get you that information. We're not closed yet. So I didn't have the visibility I needed, and, very manual intensive. And that's the other thing I looked at was like, what's involved here? What's the manual effort that we have to go through in this process? So, I really sat down and took a hard look at it. And this is really hard because I am an accountant and I am super about closing the books, getting the numbers right. So really thinking through this and saying, benefits, my initial reaction was immediately, what benefit? I'm not going to get real information. It's not going to be true information. It's not going to be something that I can really depend on. But then I went back and said I couldn't depend on it anyway. So, it was really, I was looking for timely visibility to information, that I could see information as quickly as possible as it was happening so I would have it available for decision making. I also didn't want my team to be working under pressure to get info in or done or closed when a lot of times they have no control over the timing of information coming in. They're waiting for information from, another department or individual. And then the analysis, just analyzing at, month end or seeing visibility, and meanwhile something could have happened 5-6 weeks previous, that piece was hugely important, so we couldn't move quickly enough to fix something. So, I said to myself, okay, I know these are benefits, so being the accountant that I am, how could I really make this happen? So, I sat down, a very logical person. I sat down and I said, okay, how could this really work for me? And I identified that, we have a portion, I have to plan it properly. I really have to understand what are all the moving parts of a monthly close for my firm. And that's something you would do, is look at, what is on your monthly close task list, your calendar. Then I identified, what it was that could be changed, modified, eliminated, streamlined, and how I would go about implementing that. And then lastly, of course, I wanted to validate with benchmarking, am I really achieving the goal or the benefits that I was looking for in going through this exercise? All of those things getting me to the real-time activity and visibility to information, which for me is really huge. I really need to know what's going on as it's going on. So I went through my planning process, and this is the part that even if you say, well, we can't get rid of our monthly close, you absolutely can do these steps and look at what you might do to streamline your process. And so it really starts, as I mentioned earlier, at looking at what is involved in your month-end close. If you have a month-end checklist, looking at all of the items that are on that checklist, and then determining, you want to determine what is the goal. Do you want to shorten, streamline the process, or potentially optimally eliminate? And you might not be able to eliminate the close right now. You could only streamline it, shorten it, but maybe in a year or two, you might be able to eliminate it, as we've historically known the definition of closing. So you want to determine, what is your goal. Then you want to determine, and you might have this in your checklist already, you have the tasks and the processes, determine what's involved in each one of those. And, if you're very organized and you have a very detailed list, then you want to put in there, does it take 5 hours? Does it take 2 days? What's involved? Where is the data coming from? Is it entries that you're making on data that you have control over? Is it data coming in from other systems? How is that data coming in? Is there streamlining that can be done, automations? And we're going to talk about a few of these further. The month-end accruals, and, really do a deep dive into every one of the steps and what could be moved forward or only done every 8 weeks or done quarterly, what could be done as, so for example, allocations on payroll. If your payroll, you bring it in and it's a manual process at month end and that's part of your close, then how could you potentially automate that so it comes in? And perhaps it comes in with each payroll that you're running, and you're running your allocations as the payroll is coming in. So you want to look at all of those different moving parts to see what it is that you can modify. And this is really hard because, you know, we're human beings. We're in our comfort zone. We know what we're familiar with. And, you know, our natural inclination sometimes is, you know, we can't do that. So I appreciate that this might be hard. You know, we talked about some of the steps, but you could also look at cross-training. So if it's a personnel issue and you want to include, you know, try to improve your team's workload, you could look at cross-training different tasks rather than making one person responsible for them. Same thing with spreading work out among your staff. Really also key is if there's information coming in from other departments, really engaging with everybody about the importance of getting the information quickly, because the quicker you get the information in, the quicker you're going to be able to provide information to those managers and directors that need it. Automate as much as possible. You know, we go out and work with organizations and do business process analysis and reviews, and you would be stunned at how much manual effort is being done, at how many, oops, we're having a fire alarm here, how much effort is lost on all of this, because we take information from one system, we put it into Excel, we manipulate it in Excel, and then we go out into another system. And so really look at your system, how much information is being manipulated in Excel spreadsheets, and if it could be automated or streamlined. And so you evaluate all of these items, and here again, this is ways to streamline the process. So, as I started at the beginning though, I gave you some hints about streamlining, but this webinar isn't about streamlining. We're actually, I want us to really evolve beyond streamlining. So even though you will be able to absolutely take much of what I'm going to share today and use it to accomplish some streamlining, I really want us to think about this a bit differently and how to move on. And by the way, just so everybody, if you're wondering who Erykah Badu is, she's an American singer-songwriter, and this quote just really stuck with me, not just with this presentation, but in general. And I've always thought that it's definitely a true statement. When you're evolving, there's always some level of eliminating that is part of that. So the monthly close. Back in 2008, so over 10 years ago, I would tell organizations that accounting systems were going to the cloud. And back in 2008, the common standard response was, that will never happen. Accountants will never put all their data in the cloud. And I just smiled and, you know, would counter with, well, you're doing your payroll in the cloud. That's the cloud. You're going online for your bank balances. That's the cloud. But, you know, people just looked at me, and I know I'm an accountant too. And so, but a few years after that, around, you know, 2011, 12, organizations when we would meet with them, they would start to ask about the cloud for informational purposes around their accounting. They weren't ready yet to be early adopters, but the door was definitely opening. Today, it is assumed that a system will not only be in the cloud, but it will be a real software as a service solution, you know, and not licensed just to one organization with one database. So in the short span of 10 years, and I do consider that a short span, timing, you know, the belief system has totally changed. I believe the paradigm shift is going to happen with the monthly close as well. And that's the reason why I'm sharing this webinar. And I'm going to continue talking about this in the future often, because I firmly believe this is happening. This is going to happen, and it's going to happen because technology is going to support it happening. I'm going to share how it's going to continue to evolve as I identify more and more ways that the shift is going to happen. So there's definitely going to be more to come on this topic, because the technology is going to make it happen. And so if we start thinking about it now, we will just be that much further ahead. So I talked about a little bit about why to eliminate the month-end close. So now I'd like to talk about how. And I'd like to talk about it because I really want us to start thinking about this paradigm shift that could happen right within your organization, and how you can start thinking about it now, even if you don't do anything with it for a year or two. Because, you know, this is going to happen, as I said, technology is changing, so this is going to happen naturally as time goes on. So I'm going to refer us back to our chaos of the close slide, and ask us about thinking about, you know, what if we could reduce or even eliminate the negative experience? We could have confidence in the numbers and not have to reopen the books. Imagine what that might mean for your finance department or your organization as a whole, right? Not opening the books, having confidence in the numbers, and happy staff. Imagine. So I'll tell you a secret. Am I recommending eliminating a close altogether? No. As I said, I'm an accountant. That's not what I'm recommending. We do need to book, you know, the activity. We do need to do reconciliations. We do need to do many of the activities you're currently doing. But I do have a secret around that. My secret is that I believe we should always be closing. Most of these activities, or at least many of them, I believe shouldn't be a month-end activity only. I believe we should be doing them during the course of the month. And that those that are a month-end activity, we should look at what an interim step might be, so there is no quote-unquote hard close, but real financial information ongoing. And so hence the what I call the ABCs, always be closing. So how might this actually work? So basically what I'm really talking about is not eliminating the many tasks that make up your month-end close process. You absolutely need to do them. It's part of every organization's fiduciary responsibility to ensure your numbers are correct, right? Even your auditors. It's not your auditor's job to, validate the numbers. It's management's responsibility. So you have to do all of this. What I am saying is that you shouldn't hold your financials hostage because you have to do this process to close the month. So, if you think about it, we start with your actuals. We have your accruals, we have allocations, we have reconciliations, but we also have your budget estimates. And if you bring those things together ongoing rather than just at month end, you will have improved reporting ongoing with less stress to your staff. And the only real, quote unquote, hard close you need to have becomes your year end then. You can close your months because, of course, if you're a grant funded, contract funded organization, you need to be able to report to your funders. But even there, you're going to have adjustments that are made. So, let's talk about some of the activities that you might go through on this whole process. So, if you think about what's happening, you want to book activities as they're happening daily or weekly. So real-time management and entry of activities within your organization. You want to reconcile your bank accounts daily. So odds are that you're going in and you're checking your account balances or doing an online review of your bank accounts. Make your process it be a daily, and actually do your bank rec daily, updated your reconciliations on a daily basis, so that when your month end comes, you're not waiting because I've got 4 bank reconciliations to do. You want to integrate your payroll and get it in, as soon as possible. So that's an example of integration. Payroll is a huge one for every organization. If your payroll isn't integrated and automated right now, look at how you could do that and get it in. What work might need to be done to the payroll so that you could automate that process and bring it in as soon as your payroll is run. Do your labor allocations as soon as your payroll is booked. Use automated employee expense systems. If you still have manual employee expense reimbursements or manual credit card reconciliations, which credit cards are another huge hole for most organizations. Look at systems that would allow you to automate this, that will feed right into your financial management, your accounting system. Most of these systems are fairly inexpensive and actually save organizations a tremendous amount of money. And this is another area where you would get much more improved visibility. And then other integrations, you want to look at your organization and what it is that you have other information coming in from other systems. What other program tracking systems you might have, donor fundraising systems you might have, client tracking. Where is information coming in, and how might you automate those systems? Reporting. If you're generating reports for grantors and funders, then you want to look at those ongoing. How could you update those analysis and maybe do them more frequently, or push them out into a quarterly format? So you want to just look at, some things may not be available to your organization at all. You can certainly sit there and say, oh, that won't work for us. and it might not. But the key thing here is to really look at it and see. One other area, and I had mentioned about budget estimates. So, you know, a lot of times we're very adamant that we have to have the exact correct dollars in. And often when we go in and we talk to organizations about this, what they actually come back and talk to us about is there is very little fluctuation that happens in certain areas. And so you may be going through the exercise of doing some month-end activities, but they bring very little value because there's very little fluctuation. And where this can be very powerful is automating and standardizing some entries and making, like, for example, some recurring dollar amounts, and then using your budget to actual reporting to identify where there may be fluctuations that need to be investigated or reviewed. And this is really key. So, for example, if you know that your estimates per your budget are pretty accurate, and they're within a certain margin of error, which is dependent on what is material for your organization or not, but you look at it and you could book your standard recurring entry and then true it up on a quarterly basis, now you've eliminated a step in your month-end close process, and you have not impacted your financial reporting. So there's a tremendous benefit there. Another area is recurring entries. Often organizations will have a number of entries that are just standard entries that are recurring, and they don't book those entries until the month-end close. And there's no changes to these entries. And what I'm recommending is book the entire year. You're able to run a report so that each month will show up properly, but meanwhile you saved that step of getting the information into your system. And then another area is, change the order of activities. So, for example, a lot of times we push things to the month end, and our financials are closed, on the last day of the month or whatever it might be, and everything on the month end flows around that date. But what if we were to push some of the month end close activities to the start of the month and not the back end of the month? And you might have one month that would be a little bit of a catch up, depending on the dollar amount, but then that would relieve the requirement of crushing everything into, 2-3 weeks after the month ends. So, that's another area that I talk to clients about. And, the order is also, moving dollar, activities, not only to the front of the month, but maybe quarterly or even annually, and using estimates during the course of the year. And key on all of this is really not looking at your financials as a snapshot, fixed in time, like taking a picture and the position of everybody is that in that moment of time. Financials should really be true indicators of how your organization is going from day to day and from week to week, and not just that month in time. Because that's the big thing about, and this is why I'm saying technology is really going to move this more and more. Technology is going to start providing this real-time visibility. And real-time visibility means that your users, as you start to get into the new technologies more and more, your users, your readers and consumers of the information, they're going to be looking at the information and relying on the information and wanting to see the information. And so your role will change, and it won't be this stagnant piece of information that's only given out, at a certain period of time during the next month. It's going to be real time. So that ability for you to go in and be updating things as they're occurring is going to become more and more a requirement, especially as technology keeps on moving us forward. So, and this is exactly, what I'm talking about here. Technology continues to evolve, and as it does, more and more will be expected from the finance department. And the key to all of this is, what I've been talking about right from the beginning, which was, that drive for real-time visibility to information. And it's not just going to come from, your senior management, but it's really going to be driven as much, if not more, from your program staff, directors, managers, from your funding sources, those that manage the grant and funds within your organization. And, I put in there like the evolution of telephones. Technology is moving just like that. It continues to move forward. It is moving forward faster than ever. And the current month-end close process, as it's been defined for 50 years, it's an antiquated one that results in reports to management that are outdated and backward-facing, and that's going to only become more apparent as the technology continues to evolve. And so our processes are going to be forced to evolve as well. And so your finance department needs to think about ways to shorten the timeline so that, you can get financial information to management as quickly as possible. And actually, I'm going to change that statement. It's not get it to them. They're going to go in and get it themselves. It's going to be available. You're going to be making it available to them and streamlining your close process with all of the shortcuts that I, talked about in terms of, like these ideas about how quickly you're booking entries, getting things approved, like your approval process for transactions, for example. If you can automate these processes, part of the issue here and the benefit is to streamline the manual nature of it, but it's also the time savings and the internal controls that, these automated workflows automatically give you. And in fact, if you look at the two areas of streamlining that are the most powerful right now that organizations are looking at, it is actually automating their AP and purchasing process and their expense management process. So there's, updates that organizations are doing that they don't have to, implement a new finance system. They can, realize streamlining by looking at systems that will take care of this process and, automate a lot of these things. So I wanted to, talk about the benefits of change really do outweigh the pain. The biggest obstacle to change in the month-end process is people. And I totally appreciate this. As I said, I'm an accountant. I totally get it. It may be yourself right now on this call thinking, we can't do that, and thinking about all the reasons why you can't do it. And I absolutely can relate. I can also tell you that I'm now a convert, because of the fact that it has made it easier on my team and on others. And getting the information as close to real time as possible has really, really been huge. So, I would say I started out with some steps in terms of what you could do to streamline. And as I said, I'm not talking about eliminating the close as, totally, because you have to have it, but I'm talking about really eliminating the philosophy that we can't release information unless it's 100%. That's first and foremost. And then secondly is eliminating the steps and tasks as you may know them and have them right now. We can change that up. Don't wait. You can realize improvements right now just with some, baby steps on some of the things that I provided. And the do your homework part is you really need to plan. And this part I would do with your team. If you're a manager, controller, CFO, whoever it is, sit down with the team and go through your month-end close process, your checklist, and really look at it and think about, what is this really giving me? What am I getting? Is it necessary? Or is it immaterial? Could I push it back? Could I push it forward? And really think about that, even if it's just, mainly driven by helping your staff not have to be struggling with the amount of time and effort that's involved and the stress that's involved with a month-end close. So I am now open for questions. If anybody would like to ask me anything.
Thank you, Jackie. And just a reminder to everyone, if you do have a question, there is a questions drop-down box on your control panel, and you can type them in and we can read them out.
Well, would anybody like to volunteer if they've thought about streamlining their process, or maybe have started the process?
Looks like we have somebody that raised their hand about that. Let's see. Marian Elkins, if you use the chat drop down, you can type a message to all of us and answer Jackie's question. Nothing yet.
Can we take the mute off? I know that's like unheard of.
I can try. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. We have a question. One of the struggles I have is we are a two-person office. We have 2 debit cards, and the process to enter all of the debits is exhausting and time-consuming. That's one of the things I'm trying to do better and fix.
Oh, that's a great one. So that's a perfect example of what I was talking about in terms of like the credit card aspect, the debit cards, same thing. And I totally can relate. It can be a nightmare. So, if you're in a manual environment, then the only options available to you would be to do a download from the bank, which I suspect you're doing. But then, is it possible for you to import the transactions into your system, if your system isn't difficult doesn't make it difficult to import things in. If you can get into an Excel and could import it. The other thing is, and here again, these systems are very inexpensive. You know, an expense management, which is like able to use debit and credit cards. What those systems do, and they can be as cheap as, you know, a few dollars a user per month. They go out and grab the information from your bank automatically at night, and then can bring it down into a format that you can import or bring in directly to your system. And they're very inexpensive. So you might really want to look at something like that to automate that process for you. And
Jackie, sorry, go ahead.
Yep.
She just said, we aren't doing a download from the bank. My board treasurer refuses to allow that. And she then asked, what examples of companies do that?
Okay, so what I would do is, if your board treasurer is refusing to do that because he's not allowing access to the bank account, but if you're getting access to the bank account, then you should be able to just bring it down into like an Excel or something like that. But I would have a conversation with your board treasurer about that. And the company, one of the companies that JMT recommends that we've had great success with is Nexonia. We do get some nonprofit pricing. So you could go on our website and check it out. At a minimum, you can reach out to them directly as well. But they're an example of a firm that does that kind of credit card and expense management, very user-friendly and very reasonably priced. We only work with nonprofits, so I totally get budgetary constraints. Okay, so and I see a question from Marion about importing your payroll journal. Yep. You're absolutely right. If you can import in from your payroll company into your software, huge time savings, tremendous time savings. Typically, and QuickBooks, you can, you know, import into things into QuickBooks, into, you know, just about any accounting system will allow you to import data in. QuickBooks does speak with a lot of different systems, or a lot of different payroll systems speak with QuickBooks. So the first thing I would do is reach out to maybe your payroll company and see if they have a download format pre-set up for QuickBooks, and because that would be the very first place that I would start on that exercise. And that would be a way to streamline that, because that can be a huge time savings in terms of streamlining your process. What are some other, anyone else have some other questions on some things that you have a lot of pain around on your month-end close?
One more question is coming in.
Oh, good. Okay. So while that question is coming in, Melissa's going to share the presentation. My contact information is here as well. Absolutely, we only work with nonprofits. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. So if anybody has any questions on anything after this presentation, you really feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Jackie. And the question still hasn't come in, so we'll give it another second. And if, oh, here it is. Nope. Somebody said, thank you. Will you share the recording as well? I dropped in late and would like to go back and listen from the beginning. And yes, we will be sending you a copy of the recording as well as the slides. So Jackie, the other question hasn't come in, so if we miss it, we can definitely answer that for you. You can either email Jackie at the email that she has up on the screen, or you can respond to the email that we send out with the recording and the presentation. So with that, if we don't have any other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up for the day. So,
very good. Well,
Jackie,
thank you, everyone. Thank you. I hope everyone found it informative. Some new thinking for you to start thinking about.
Yes, and thank you so much for your time. And if you all are interested in more of these webinars or events that JMT puts on, you can go to our website, jmtconsulting.com, and click on our calendar. We would love to see you. Thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.